Mike, how did you come to Nocturnal Animals?
How long have we known each other?
About 4 or 5 years.
And how did we meet?
We met, I don't know how we met. I think I asked you to do our nonprofit event.
The AITAF.
ATAF, yeah.
Yeah. I read that Christmas monologue about the guy who hates Christmas.
Douglas Gower.
Yeah. I've done it a couple times, right?
Yeah.
And you do the Sam Shepard thing. Curse of the Starving Class.
Well, I switched it up.
Yeah.
But I think every time that, I did that one.
Yeah. That's a beautiful thing that you do, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. People should know about this.
Okay.
Tell them about it.
My name is Adam Driver. I run a nonprofit that Mike has done a couple times called Arts in the Armed Forces, where we do contemporary American plays for a military audience. And we ask actors, really great actors, and Mike, Mike, to read like 2 monologues or a monologue or read in a play.
Right.
And that's what we've been doing more because we're starting to get bored of the monologues. And we invite a military audience and it's free and they're great. We just had our event on Broadway.
And is there a website people can go to if they want to
really
donate or help out?
www.aitaf.org.
Nice. Well, to answer your question, I got the script in the mail. I read it. I thought, wow, this is really bleak. I don't know if this is for me. But then they were like, Tom Ford wants to meet you. And I met him at the Hotel Carlisle. I don't know why I always say that, Hotel Carlisle, because now everyone's going to know where he stays.
Where is that?
It's in New York.
Oh.
That's where he stays when he goes to New York. It's a really nice old hotel. They have a really nice jazz lounge in the lobby that's kind of famous. It's got murals on the wall that are done by the same artist that did the Madeline books.
Oh, yeah.
Bettelman's. The Bettelman's thing.
Okay, I didn't know that. No.
Yeah. So anyway, we talked for a little while. I was like, this guy's super smart, and I bet he'll make a good movie. So I said yes. But I like the character of Bobby because he's like, I'm really into those Jim Thompson books, you know, those true crime novels. He wrote like The Getaway and The Killer Inside Me and all those books. So for me, Bobby was kind of like he could have been a character out of that genre. You know, playing a detective is fun and all that. How did you wind up playing a bus driving poet?
Hold on. Did you see A Single Man before you read Nocturnal?
You're going to ask me that question when I'm on camera?
Oh, God. Well, I just assumed the answer would be yeah.
Honestly, I hadn't seen Single Man when it first came out.
Sure.
I actually have a little doll of Tom Ford at home that I stick needles in his face. But when I read the script and I met him, I thought, maybe he's not so bad.
Wait, what? You have a dog named Tom Ford?
No, a doll.
A doll
named
Tom. Okay.
Doll.
Right.
What you got to say about this man's wife and daughter?
I don't know nothing about that. I've never seen him before in my life.
What you gonna tell me about Ray and Turk?
Who?
Who? What are you, an owl?
You probably feel the same way about Jim Jarmusch, I imagine.
Yeah, I have a doll of him at home.
Yeah. Were you a fan of his?
Yeah, big time. I saw Down by Law, I think was the first time, the first movie I saw of his. And then
Stranger Than Paradise?
Stranger Than Paradise. I remember there was like a movie theater where I was in Indiana that was an hour and a half away. I remember driving to see Coffee and Cigarettes when it first came out and didn't really get a lot of it. Like I liked a lot of things about it, and some of them I didn't really get, but I just thought about it for years. And I think about that a lot of his movies. A lot of them, like where you are in your life, you don't get a lot of the things that are in it until you're older and you understand it. I just always thought about all of his movies. I feel like I can play them through after one viewing every.
Right. They stick with you.
Yeah, same. I met him first, and then he mailed me the script. But I would have done like whatever he
wanted.
Yeah, it was just like as a formality. I'll read the script, and I got it and read it immediately in one sitting, and then said, "Yeah, I want to do it."
Down by Law is one of the coolest casts ever. It might be one of my favorite casts.
Yeah, Roberto Benigni,
Tom Waits, and John Laurie.
John Laurie. You ever seen Fishing with John?
No, I haven't seen that show.
They're really funny.
People love that.
Yeah.
Adam, what appealed to you about this role in Patterson? Have you been dying to play a bus driving poet all your life?
I always knew that this was going to come by, and so I said finally.
Yeah.
Well, but what we were kind of saying earlier, that I just knew because it was Jim.
Yeah.
And then I guess, but then reading the script, you're like, oh, it's very much an antidote to heavy action movies, and like
Right.
he really trusts you to think, and that, I mean, not that you're not thinking anyway, but he trusts that the audience will think that that's cinematic enough, that there's nothing else you have to add on top of it.
Were you intimidated by having to deal with the poetry? Because that can be a tricky thing to do. Particularly, you do a lot of like ADR, and you do it really beautifully. But to juxtapose that, like when you're actually shooting the shot, you're just standing there staring into space, and it's like, oh, a few months from now, I'm going to go in and say a poem. Was it a few months between when you read the poems in ADR and when you shot those scenes? Or?
Yeah, we did it 3 times. He had the poems before we started, so I read them through once in like in a dressing room, like kind of stall before we even started shooting, and then we read them again as we were shooting them, and then we did it again at the very end of it to see how much they would change, I guess.
And did you notice a change? Did you
I
feel
don't
more
know.
connected?
I didn't really. I guess in a way I was more comfortable with saying it. But we both have an allergy, Jim Jarmusch and I, to hearing poetry read where it's like precious, where there's
Right.
like always like very over emotional, letting you know that poetry is important, and I never absorb it. Plus, Ron Padgett, who wrote the poems for the movie, comes from that kind of New York school of poetry where it's very conversational.
Matter of fact.
Yeah, which I like. I've always feels like it leaves the audience to have the feeling as opposed to watching somebody read poetry and emote everywhere.
Wow. I've never heard that name before. Where's he come from?
Ron Padgett.
Yeah.
I think he was kind of the Kenneth Koch. Well, Kenneth Koch was Jim's teacher at Columbia because he took poetry at Columbia. That kind of New York school.
Jim did?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So
And I think he just knew him over the years and asked him if he would write the poetry for this.
I knock off work, have a beer at the bar. I look down at the glass and feel glad.
Let me ask you something. TV,
Yes.
stage, film. What do you prefer?
I don't have a preference, do you?
Theater.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
There's just less interference. There's less people in your business, you know? You just get to go out there and nobody walks up and starts like touching your face. You just go out there and say your lines, and when you're done, you know? And you can really, I feel like it's just easier to get momentum on stage. It's so hard to get momentum when you're filming because you're always stopping and waiting and stopping and waiting. And like right when you feel like, oh, I'm finally in it, it's like, cut, okay, that's lunch. And then, you know, you go sit in your trailer and hope that you don't lose that thread, you know.
Does it matter where you do theater? Because I've seen you do, I saw you do Uncle Vanya down at Soho Rep.
Soho Rep, which had to go out of business. Did you hear that?
I heard that, yeah. Just
so
like
sad.
a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
I saw Blasted there.
Oh.
I saw what you do with Sam, the Uncle Vanya there.
Yeah.
I said, they were really good. That really
It's an amazing
sucks.
theater. It's so sad. Apparently they'd been operating against code for like years.
Oh.
And they only recently found that out.
They-
But anyway.
Because of the way because of the audience? Because
Yeah, I mean, look, the place was obviously slightly dangerous. I don't want to get into a litigious situation here, but I think it had something to do with not being safe.
Right.
But anyway, to answer your question, I think, like, I love small theaters.
And then
like
I
that.
saw you in Long Day's Journey into Night just recently.
In the
on
bigger
the
theater.
Broadway, yeah, right,
Yeah, yeah.
okay.
I love both of them. I mean, I just love the stage. That's where I came from. That's why I started doing this. I mean, I know it sounds kind of obnoxious, but I never really intended to be a movie actor, really. I just started out doing plays, and I just loved doing plays. And I kind of wound up being out here in the first place because of a play I did, you know, and that just happened to be very popular. And
At what point were you? Is it like a mandate that you set for yourself, where I have to do a play a year or every 2 years?
yeah,
or
I try and
whatever
get
comes
back
up?
every year. But I'm also really starting to enjoy doing camera work more because I just feel a lot more comfortable with it. You know, when you start acting on camera, it's just very stressful and awkward, and
Right.
you just feel like it's impossible. And then you know, 20 years go by and you're like, well, it's not impossible. I mean,
right.
You know, it's not that bad, but it takes a while to get used to it. You know?
That's the biggest transition. I remember going from theater where suddenly to film or doing both at the same time where it's documented and that's it. The final part of it
the
really
closure
fucked with me.
It's
I think,
so hard.
Right.
Because you just wake up the next morning, you're like, I want to do it again. I want to do it again.
And you can in a play, obviously, in the end. And I always feel at the end of it, I want to go back to the beginning because now I have a better sense of, like if you're doing a play for a long run, for like 3 months, I always feel at the end, I wish I could go back and like now I have a better understanding of it. Whereas a film, like I feel like I didn't invest enough time because I compare it to, you can't help but compare it to the theater.
Although I did have one experience with film that was very similar to theater was when I worked with Sidney Lumet, because he really rehearses a film like it's a play. And it was cool because he actually did a run through of the movie, the same way you would do like a dress rehearsal of a play.
Right, yeah.
Like he rehearsed all the scenes in the movie, and then one day it was in the Ukrainian ballroom. It's over on 2nd Avenue in the East Village there.
What movie was it?
It's before The Devil Knows You're Dead.
Oh, yeah.
Mr. Lumet's last picture.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. So they would tape out all the sets on the floor, and you could sit and watch. You could watch the whole movie, the other actors do their scenes, and
that's amazing.
And you go up and do your scenes. And that was that was probably the most comfortable I ever felt. And it's because Lumet, he really understood how to rehearse. Like, cause on some films you'll have rehearsal and you show up and it's like, you kind of read the scenes and you kind of walk out just as confused as you were before you got there. There's no real consensus, but with Lumet, he really knew how to do it.
What are we gonna do?
It's a question of how serious you are about seeing justice done.
Is there something you hope for in a director? I was trying to figure out a different way to reword it. Do you come in with like an expectation, or do you?
Well, I like to be surprised, you know.
Right.
I mean,
like Sidney Lumet, did you have any like preconceived ideas of how it was going to be? And
well, I was on cloud 9. I mean,
right. That's a bad question.
Well, this is an interesting thing. I'll tell you this story about auditioning for Sidney Lumet.
Okay.
This answers the question you just asked me about what do you hope for in a director. So when I went in to audition for that movie, it was just Ellen Lewis, who's the casting director there, and Sidney. There was no reader in the room. And Ellen said, Sidney, this is Michael I told you about. He's going to be reading this part. And, you know, Sidney has these big Coke bottle glasses on. He's kind of looking at me like this. He's got the script in front of him. And he's like, He's like, I'm going to read with you. Is that all right? I'm going to read the other part in the scene. Is that okay? And I'm like, yeah, sure. That'd be great. I'd love Sidney Lumet. Yeah, let's do it. He's like, all right, so you're reading for, what part? Oh, yeah. He's, what scene is that? Oh, the scene in the restaurant. Oh, yeah. And he's like doing this. He's thumbing through every once in a while he looks up at me, you know, and licking his finger. And then he's like, oh, yeah, okay, this is the scene. Yeah, this is the one. All right. He's like, it looks like you have the first line, okay? I'm like, yeah, okay. And the first line's like, hey, are you such and so? And the person doesn't respond, and I say, hey, are you such and so? And he's like, okay, I'm ready. Go ahead. I'm like, hey, are you such and so? I don't respond. I know. Hey, are you such and so? Okay, that's good. Thanks for coming in. And I walked out, and he turned to Alan Lewis, and he's like, that's the guy. Like that. It's just like the amount of precision in his mind, and the fact that he knows exactly like what works, what doesn't work, what he wants, because he's thought about it so much, and because he's got so much experience. Like, that's thrilling to work with somebody like that who just, because you waste so much time with like uncertainty and kind of stumbling around wondering, oh, should it be this, should it be that? And to see somebody who can be that sure of something so quickly, that's one likable quality in a director, I think.
Was there ever a job that you I have so many questions for you now. After that, like working with Sidney Lumet and watching someone being so decisive, that changed, is there like a definitive job that changed the way you worked afterwards, or no? Or is it all kind of like a cumulative?
I think honestly what changed things the most was doing Boardwalk. Because it was just such a going concern, you know? You're just going in all the time, getting to really spend time with the material, with the directors, getting to work with some of the directors multiple times. You know, somebody like Tim Van Patten, who basically kind of ran that show, directed 4 episodes a season. I learned a lot from him, and all the directors on that show were so top-notch. Alan Coulter, Ed Bianchi. I felt like after I did Boardwalk, that was when I finally was more comfortable doing the camera work.
Because you're just doing it for so long.
Yeah,
you go back to the same character for,
Yeah.
I don't know how many years, 6 years?
It was 5 seasons,
5
seasons.
I
mean, for girls, is it like that with you? Do you get more uncomfortable?
Yeah, I think the same, where you get to, you get, similar to theater, what we were saying, you get more, you get another chance at like fixing the things that you didn't like about it the first time.
Working on a poem for you.
A love poem?
Yeah, I guess if it's for you, it's a love poem. It's kind of inspired by our Ohio blue tip matches.
Really?
How have girls changed your career? No, I mean, how did girls?
Yeah, right. I don't know how. I mean, it opened a lot of doors for me. I would say that where suddenly, I don't know if you've had the experience at a TV show, because people aren't going to a theater and watching it, they're watching it at home where they're really comfortable. I think there's like, people make a more personal connection maybe with your characters. Maybe that's an illusion, but it's good. It just suddenly, people like it, for 2 months or whatever, you had another, or however long the show ran, because it's like 10 episodes, you're there every kind of week at a set time. So it, like, I hadn't done much film or television before then, so suddenly people are watching you every week at a certain time. I don't know, it opened up a lot of opportunities.
But it doesn't really change, like, it's like, you didn't get like the Star Wars stuff because you were on Girls.
Well, kind of. I worked with Kathy Kennedy on a movie on Lincoln. I had like a couple days on Lincoln, and she was the producer of that and recommended me to JJ, and the only thing that JJ knew me from really was Girls. Yeah.
Have you ever asked JJ or Disney for permission to do Kylo Ren on Girls? Could you cross
We talked about it,
yeah.
Yeah, with Lena too. She wanted to do something with like
a sex scene with
he just shows
Ren
up and he's like, where's my spaceship?
Yeah,
like it is like out of time.
Yeah.
That'd be really great.
That would be hot.
Like seeing cars for the first time.
Right.
You know, just like walking outside, like watching people walk dogs. That'd be really great. In full costume. Like going to the supermarket.
Getting a dog, going to the pound. Kylo Ren at the pound.
Right.
Like,
I want that one.
I want that one.
What's it like working on a blockbuster, a big movie? Do you have a preference? I feel like you
have
get
a preference.
I get asked that a lot though.
You know, I love making Man of Steel, but I'm kind of weird because I actually looked at Man of Steel as a very socially relevant movie, not necessarily a comic book movie.
Actually, I think the same way about Star Wars, actually.
Yeah.
But I want to, not to interrupt.
Well, no, that's great. I mean, that's the thing. It's like I look at it, I think, here's a movie, here's a story about some people, a civilization, they lived on a planet, and they used up all the resources, and they destroyed the planet, and they thought the way to solve the problem was just go get another planet. Mm-hmm. I'm like, you hear people bandying that idea around.
Yeah, that's what we're doing now.
Around these parts from time to time. So I was like, well, you know, I mean, that's really a home run if you can make a big, entertaining, action-packed movie that actually has some underlying social significance.
Right.
And you feel that way, of course. Star Wars is the same way.
Right. And there's all those like personal dynamics and like family and obviously, but then there's like this young guy who's kind of like a terrorist, you know, and just the you know, the First Order, this like group that thinks that they're right, you know, facing another group that it almost could argue is equally, you know, are also terrorists,
right,
who think that they're right, you know, right? So you have two groups who are completely convinced and morally justified to do whatever it is that, you know, if it means you know, blowing up a Death Star, which has so many, you know, families and people, even though they're supposed to be bad, and then on the opposite side, you know, Alderaan, you know, or whatever, a planet, you know, the two terrorist, I mean, they're maybe a bit harsh, but two sides basically thinking that they are justified in behaving however they need to you know,
protect their civilization,
yeah,
and culture,
way of life.
yeah,
Just
their
the
way of
idea
life.
that people think that they're 100% convinced that they're correct. I thought it was really interesting. Do you feel that like the older you get, the way it changes the way you work? Not to imply that you're old.
Being older?
Yeah, but that, like, you look at yourself when you were younger.
Got my Just for Men in. I don't know what you're talking about.
Like when you were younger, do you like look back and you're like, oh, that was a lot of energy spent where I didn't need to, or you're like, actually, that was.
I just feel like I'm more helpful now. Like, you know, when I was younger, I was like, oh, I have so much inside of me. I just want to let it all out. And now I'm like, I look at the director and I'm like, you're trying really hard to make this movie. How can I be of assistance? You know, how can I make this easier for you? It's just like, I feel like, and I've said this before, it's like it's a service. You're helping someone else. They're doing the heavy lifting, you know, the writers,
Right.
the directors, the producers, and you show up and like, let me help you realize your vision of whatever this is.
That's exactly how I think of it, as a service also.
Yeah.
We should be friends. That is
Never gonna happen.
That it's very much like you're a smaller part of a huge kind of thing.
You know, this sounds obnoxious, but it's kind of like being like a genie. In a
Does this
bottle.
sound just confusing?
They
What
rub
do
the
you,
bottom. Yeah.
what do you mean?
Well, you show up and you're like, okay, how can I help you? And I
Oh,
come out of
yeah,
the
yeah.
bottle, and
Yeah.
then when you're done, they put you back in the bottle, and throw you on the beach.
You have three wishes.
Someone
Either
comes by.
I'll show up on time,
I'll show up on time.
I'll know my lines,
I won't be drunk.
I won't be drunk. That's it.